the whole goal was just not let him win the game, not let him be a difference maker because he had done it all year. All he wanted was one chance, to make a difference. And that's what he did. I was standing right there on the sideline, and he just came right by me.
Did he wave to you?
Now if it were today, he would have winked at me.
Intercepted by Charles Woodson. Polish off the Heisman.
They will not catch Lamar Jackson.
35-40. He's on his way. Desmond Howard is going all the way. That is a Heisman Trophy winner.
Welcome back to Hello Heisman this Thanksgiving week. And 30 years ago this week, one of the great, can you believe it? One of the great Heisman moments, Desmond Howard's punt return against Ohio State. And I have to make an admission to you, Des.
Okay.
So, when we were first getting ready to do this show,
okay,
and we were batting around a few names, what would we call this thing? And we finally came up with Hello Heisman.
Yes,
I thought, okay, well, that sounds good. But I didn't know that it had any significance. It had been a long time since I watched that clip. So then this week, as we're getting ready to do this, I went on YouTube and I watched the punt return against Ohio State.
Yep.
And then there it is, Keith Jackson making the call, the great Keith Jackson. And there you are at about the 5-yard line, and he says, "One man to beat, goodbye. Hello, Heisman." And I'm thinking, I am such a moron. How did I not know about something so famous? Was that something, do you remember the first time you watched the clip of it?
Jimmy, the thing is, we're talking early 90s, right? So you don't have access to everything instantly like you do today. And so it was like probably maybe, the next week someone brought it up and they showed me the clip. And because obviously I didn't know it at the time, and no one told me immediately afterwards either. It was just so much hype and hoopla about what had taken place. And so I like, man, this is like perfect. Like, I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable. And Keith Jackson, the way he did it too, like, if you really check it out and you pay attention to his cadence, like, the one thing you want to do when you're calling games is know when to jump in and when to lay out and when to let a play breathe. And he did it just perfectly. Like, as I got to the punter, he's like, "One man," and then he lays out. As I pass the punter, "Goodbye," and he lays out. And as I cross the goal line, "Hello, Heisman." Just the cadence of him, is brilliant. And that's what the great ones do. They know when to let a play breathe and just let the audience take in the moment, and then when to cut in just a little bit. And he did it perfectly. And that's why, the late, great Keith Jackson is a Hall of Famer. He was the best in the business. And I was very, very fortunate that he was calling the game that day that play happened.
Yeah. Listen, so when I first got into the business, real quick, Keith Jackson's story.
Shoot.
So when I first got into the business, I was a young man, and I worked at ABC Sports back in the day. And I remember the first time that I worked with Keith Jackson.
Okay.
And he was a legend. I don't know, what the equivalent would be, but first of all, he was, an older man, and I was young to begin with.
Right.
And he was a big man, and man of few words and not many smiles either. But he was a legend, and I remember he was coming to New York. I was a production assistant, and I was responsible for booking his hotel room.
Okay.
And all of the people who worked for ABC Sports, all the great ones, Howard Cosell and Jim McKay and Keith Jackson, they would all stay at this very famous hotel, the Plaza Hotel.
Okay.
And so as a production assistant, I booked Keith a room at the Plaza Hotel. I'm all nervous, and our office is about 2 blocks away.
Yep.
And so I call the Plaza Hotel just to make sure that the room's ready for him. And the person at the front desk says, "Oh, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson has canceled the room." And I thought, oh my God, this is a disaster, or the room has been canceled.
Right,
so
right.
I ran the 2 or 3 blocks up to the hotel.
Okay.
And I go to the front desk, and what happened? And they said, well, he went down the block. He said he's going to the Park Lane Hotel, which is another famous hotel about 3 blocks away.
Okay.
So I run down to the Park Lane, and there's Keith at the front desk, and I introduce myself. First time I'm meeting him. There's Keith at the front desk, and I say, Keith, hi, I'm Jimmy Roberts. Was there a problem over there? Is something wrong? And he says, Jimbo, I don't stay at the Plaza Hotel. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. What was the problem? He says, well, let me tell you a story. He says, a couple of years ago, I went there and there was a young man at the front desk and he gave me some guff. And so I reached over the counter and I popped him. And I thought, holy shit. I said, he punched out a hotel clerk for giving him some lip? I better keep it on the straight and narrow with this guy.
Right.
But that was the first time I ever met Keith Jackson. And I'm telling you what, you talk about somebody who was legendary.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are plenty of people who are watching and listening to us right now who will know who he was.
Yep.
But if you don't,
yeah,
you should go check it out. He was, a real character. Did you ever meet him?
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Yeah. Big fan of Keith Jackson. And he was like a gentle giant because, like you said, he is such a big man. He had a huge presence, but he loved college football and he loved talking to players who, I guess, who were great players and who exemplified what he thought college student athletes should be. And so I had great times with Mr. Jackson. He was just a wonderful, wonderful person to be around. He's great, a tremendous storyteller, and just a wealth of knowledge too. And he can, recall so many games and things of that nature. So I always had fun when I sat down to talk to Keith Jackson.
Yeah, and what people may not be aware of is that back in the day, you couldn't get college football everywhere until until a famous lawsuit happened. And back then, there was only one place you could watch college football, and that was every Saturday on ABC Sports, and he was the voice of college football on ABC. All right, so let's go back to those days.
Okay.
30 years ago.
Wow.
This week, November 23rd, Ohio State, Michigan, second quarter. I think there is a tremendous irony about this situation. You know what it is?
What is it?
Is that the guy who was the quarterback on the other team is now one of your partners. Am I right?
Yeah. So actually, that's a good point because he came in like they had to rotate a couple of quarterbacks, and so Kirk Herbstreit was actually one of the quarterbacks for Ohio State that Saturday afternoon, and he played some, and he actually ended up getting concussed during the game, so then he had to come back out the game. But yeah, he was a part of it. So that's crazy. That is so bananas that he was on the field too.
Well, I think we've started to kind of lift a little bit on what you remember about that day.
Yeah.
But I think we should try and get Kirk's recollection of that day. Kirk, are you there? Let's bring Kirk Herbstreit in, who's joined us now on Hello Heisman
Are
on
you
this
serious?
special anniversary.
Not my guy.
That's what I do. That's what we do, Desmond. There he is. Kirk Herbstreit. Herbie, thanks for joining us. What do you remember about that week?
That week? I remember Ohio State, man. We'd lost 3 in a row, and we were going up to try to get a W. And this was John Cooper's era where the shoe was on the other foot. I mean, Michigan was dominant in that era of the rivalry. And I just remember it being a dark day. And I remember 21 and blue. The whole goal was just not let him win the game, not let him be a difference maker because he had done it all year. And for the most part, in the offensive side, I think they did a pretty good job. But in special teams, all he wanted was one chance, to make a difference. And that's what he did. I was standing right there on the sideline, and he just came right by me.
Did he wave to you?
Now if it were today, he would have winked at me. But he just went right by me. I was at about the 25-yard line, and I just kept watching him. And I mean, I watched the whole deal. I watched him do his thing, and just was like, I didn't know in 1991 it would obviously become lead him to the Heisman. I didn't know Keith Jackson had said, "Hello, Heisman." I didn't know any of that at the time. But little did I know I'd be working with him all these years, and it would become an iconic moment for the sport.
Hangs his punt high. Desmond will field it and return it from the 8.
He splits two men, up 15-20, goes to his left, into the open field, 35-40. He's on his way. Desmond Howard is going all the way. A spectacular 92-yard punt return for a touchdown. He has done it again. Unbelievable. That is a Heisman Trophy winner, Frank. What a run.
Here's a question I got for you, Herbie. You know, eventually, Desmond won the Heisman Trophy with 85% of the first place votes, which at that point was a record, and it's only been surpassed once by Joe Burrow a couple of years ago from LSU. Can you give people an idea of how dominant and dangerous a player Des was in his day?
Well, it was in his day. I think it's important because it was a different time. You know, it was a very different era. You know, Michigan back in those days had Leroy Horde. You know, you had talented running backs, and offensive linemen were going to the NFL every year. I mean, they were known because of coming off the Bo years for their physicality. All really good teams in that era were. And you had to match their physicality. And then in 1991, you know, Elvis Gerback had a few years under his belt. They became more confident probably in him. And the very first game of the year against Notre Dame, they have that Heisman moment where he lays out in the back of the end zone and wins the game. So, I mean, that was his signature moment, other than the Ohio State game, was like right there. Then he has a monster year, and it was just different. I mean, think about it, Jimmy. I mean, you're used to Bo. You think of Bo. If we all think of Bo and Gary Moeller in that era, we think of defense and running the ball, old school football.
Right, exactly.
And then 21 comes along, and it becomes a dynamic playmaker, returning punts, you know, yards after the, you know, he could catch a slant and wiggle and go 70 on you, or he can go behind you and make a play. It was just ahead of his time. You know, the great players to me are always ahead of their time in their playmaking ability. Guys like Herschel Walker and Bo Jackson, Dez, right. You know, he just had he was blessed with a skill set and a mind for the game that made him just a once of a lifetime type of player. So, unfortunately, I was wearing scarlet and gray at that time. You know, watching him, wishing he were on my team, doing that. If we would have been boys, you know, back in high school, I'm confident maybe I could have pulled him to Columbus, but I didn't know him in high school, so he ended up going up north. Yeah. And you know, there was a pipeline, by the way, in that era from Ohio into that Michigan roster, and Dez is a great example of that.
Yeah. So you said it was a different time. That's where three yards and a cloud of dust came from. Actually, maybe an era slightly before Woody and Bo. But right. Now listen, are the two of you guys going to be okay this week? Big week. You going to be dining together? What's the deal?
We're on opposite ends of the desk, so we'll be okay.
Man, it's fun. It's fun. You know, I feel like our era, it's fun to trash talk. You know, it's fun to have fun that day of the game or that week, really. But we're from just a different era. Like you know, when I see specials this week, Archie Griffin sitting down, having a dinner with some of the Michigan players that he played against, and they're kind of laughing about certain stories. There's a respect that was always there because a lot of these guys were from the same regions. Some of them went to Michigan, some of them went to Ohio State, but there was almost like when I bump into a Michigan player, it's like, oh my gosh, what's up? There's like a respect there. Versus nothing against Indiana or Illinois, but when you bump into one of those, hey, what's up? Oh yeah, but they're Ohio State, Michigan. You know, at least the older generations, there's a serious.
We were in the trenches together.
Yeah, there's a respect there. Exactly. You know, and I hope that's still there. I don't know if it's still there today, but that's how it used to be. So Des and I will be good this week.
Yeah, we're always good. Jimmy, I got a story too. At first, you guys blew my mind with bringing Kirk on here. This is great. This is like great. This is like the best surprise.
Love that.
Yeah, no, you guys got me with that one. That's tremendous. So, and to talk about the respect, Jimmy, you know, and that's what it's about. Like, I have so much respect for these guys, and you know, you want to win when you're on the field, but afterwards, you know, you're just great friends with them, right? And I took Kirk to dinner, right? This is years ago, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And we went with a Michigan booster, and he wanted like us to go to dinner. He said, make sure you bring Kirk. And this is like, you know, like a prominent Michigan booster. And he wanted to pay for the dinner. He brought his own wine. And at the end, Jimmy, this guy gave Kirk and myself custom watches that he had made. Kirk's watch was in Ohio State's colors, and my watch was in Michigan colors. And it was just to show his appreciation, not only, for the rivalry, but for the respect that he has for Kirk and for Ohio State and what Kirk does. And it was just a tremendous gesture on his behalf. I mean, this is a Michigan guy, but he respects Kirk, he respects Ohio State, and he respects the rivalry. So I always say that, you need certain teams, just like Ali needed Frazier, and Frazier needed Ali, to bring that up out of you. And that's what I thought that, the rivalry was all about. Mm-hmm. Each team would bring the best out of the other team.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I mean, I've been covering sports a long time, and every time we get around to talking about the great rivalries, and we're trying and we're searching for an example, we always come back to a couple of examples. North Carolina and Duke in basketball, Ohio State and Michigan in football, the Yankees and the Red Sox. I'm sure there'll be somebody out there who'll give me some heat about not mentioning their particular favorite. But Ohio State, Michigan is very special. It's Ohio State, Michigan week. Kirk, I know it's been a busy time for you. You got a lot of work to do. Get ready for the weekend. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this anniversary week for your buddy Des.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Appreciate
of course, Des. Glad to be here. Jimmy, I appreciate you asking me to be on to celebrate this and look back at it. Again, I was on the other side, and that day, it was frustrating, but having become such good friends with Des, I look at Des like a teammate. On game day, we're kind of teammates like you are on a football field. So I will not be celebrating too much on Saturday for Michigan and for Des, but I can right now during the week, that's for sure. So happy to be with you guys.
Good stuff. One of the reasons why the show has been so good for so many years. The great Kirk Herbstreit, thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
all right, Des. All right, we move on. So let's get back to that punt return that year.
Yeah, man.
One of the things that always fascinates me is something that Kirk mentioned. Is that the pipeline from Ohio to the University of Michigan. How in the world could somebody who grew up in Ohio go play for Michigan?
Well, it starts with the fact that I wasn't a big college football fan. So it was not like I was, oh man, Ohio State, I love the Buckeyes. That wasn't my mindset at all. I lived for Sundays and Monday night football. Like, I was a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. I would watch college football every now and then. Don't forget, this is back in we're talking early to mid 80s at that point, if I'm going to be really watching college football. And you only had a couple of games on ABC or what have you. So anyway, but I was a big Dallas Cowboys fan, and I love Tony Dorsett. And so I lived for Sundays and Monday night football. So it wasn't like a big deal to me about Ohio State. And then when I was being recruited, crazy thing happened. So Earl Bruce was fired, right?
Yep.
Earl Bruce was fired. And I told my dad, I said, well, Ohio State is off the table. And here I am, I'm in Cleveland, right? Just right up the road. And he's like, why, son? I said, because they're bringing in this coach from out west named John Cooper. I don't really know what type of system he wants to run. I don't know what type of personnel he's going to need. And quite frankly, Dad, I don't want to be part of like a rebuilding program. So I said, Ohio State's off the table. So I never even took an unofficial visit to Columbus. Really? I was right up the road in Cleveland. I never even took an unofficial visit to Columbus. And the first time I stepped foot on their campus as a football player was we're wearing an amazing blue winged helmet. So so that's why it was never like that. Okay, well, I'm leaving the Buckeye State. I'm not going to Ohio State. It just wasn't that big of a deal. And then on top of that, once I went to Ann Arbor and I sat down in front of Bo Schembechler, and, to put this in context, like, Bo was larger than life back then. Like, Bo was that guy. So when I sat down in front of Coach Schembechler, it just felt right. It felt like, okay, this is the extension from all of the coaching that I've received that I need. This is going to be the next step. It seems like the natural progression in my development. So talking to Bo and what he talked about and his program and just how tough and disciplined he was, and I felt like it was a natural fit, and so I actually went up there as a running back. I was a running back and safety in high school.
So where else did you consider going? How many offers did you have?
So Nick Saban was actually on the staff at Michigan State, and Nick Saban used to travel down from East Lansing to Cleveland to recruit me. So I took a trip to East Lansing because I mean Nick is a hell of a recruiter. Maybe if he was the head coach, I might have signed. Who knows? But so I went.
Well, he eventually did become the head coach there.
He did, exactly.
Yeah.
So I went to Michigan State. I went to Syracuse. I took a trip to Syracuse.
Really?
Yeah. McPherson. Yeah, exactly. And one of my former teammates named Turnell Sims. He was a line offensive tackle at St. Joe's, and he went to Syracuse. So I took a trip to Syracuse. I also went to Georgia Tech. Coach Ross was down there.
Bobby Ross.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I took a trip to Purdue. They had a hell of a recruiter named Chuck Prefer, and Chuck Prefer was a great recruiter. So those are the visits I went to: Michigan State, Purdue, Georgia Tech, and Syracuse.
So no Notre Dame, huh?
No Notre Dame. No Notre Dame. Not at all. I didn't. Nah. Notre Dame just wasn't my flavor, But eventually, they played a big role in my college career.
Yes, they did. Kirk mentioned that two touchdowns.
Gets the snap. He's going to throw. He pumps once, now heaves it deep in the end zone. Touchdown, Desmond Howard. What a catch and what a call on 4th down and an inch. Elvis Grbac heaved it to Desmond Howard for a 25-yard touchdown. Unbelievable.
If I'm not mistaken, though, it was the second game of the year. So that year, you actually opened the year with 4 touchdowns against Boston College.
Right. Yeah.
You had 6 touchdowns in your first 2 weeks.
You want to hear something crazy? Jimmy, this is how you know that the brand of Notre Dame is huge, is really significant. So first week, Boston College on the road. They have this new head coach who just came from the NFL, so they were like really hyped up. This guy named Tom Coughlin, and so we're playing. Yeah, they were really excited. They got this NFL coach, and you're like, okay, we're gonna get with Michigan. So that game, I scored 4 touchdowns, three receiving touchdowns, and I opened up the second half with a kickoff return for a touchdown. So here I am, 4 touchdowns against Boston College. I mean, this is a Power 5 school. This is a major university. And people in the media, that kid Howard, I mean, he's okay. He's a pretty good player, right? 4 touchdowns up there at their place. The next weekend, playing Ann Arbor against Notre Dame, and Lou Holtz and that crew comes in there. They're a top 10 team. And I scored 2 touchdowns. And all of a sudden now I'm on the cover of Sports Illustrated that week, which was a huge thing back then. Not only that, but when you opened it, there was a fold out, where it was the extension of the 4th and 1 diving catch that I made, where my body is across 2 pages. And I'm like, man, so I scored 4 against Boston College. And that kid Howard at Michigan, he's a pretty good player. I scored 2 against Notre Dame. Damn it.
Now
he's
you're on
a
the cover
Heisman candidate. Put him on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Yeah, so shows you the strength of that brand.
Well, I think I heard this on your show last week. They say you're either going to win the Heisman playing for Notre Dame or you're going to win it playing against Notre Dame, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep, that's a good point.
But so that game, I want you to walk me through that punt return. Because it was your Heisman moment. I mean, the play against Notre Dame was terrific. You had a wonderful year. You racked up a bunch of big numbers.
Yeah.
But you guys were up big at the time. You were up 17-3. It's the second quarter. You ended up running away with the game. But what are you thinking?
Well, Jimmy, the score might as well had been 7-3 in my mind, because I didn't make an impactful play, and I wanted to make an impactful play. I mean, that was what I had done all season long, and plus, like we already talked, I was from Cleveland, born and raised in Cleveland. So even though I wasn't like a big college football fan, I knew about the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. I knew about the Rose Bowl. Like you live that when you're in the Midwest. So I'm thinking, man, here it is. These guys are playing the safeties way back. I mean, they could have played their safeties so far back, they played them like they were going to catch punts. Like that's how far back their safeties were. So it's like, okay, their game plan is not to let me make an impactful play. And so I was very frustrated. You know, I'm a competitor. I'm like, man, this is shit. I'm pissed. So they're near midfield, and so the general rule of thumb is for a punt returner, anytime the opponent is about to punt anywhere near midfield, is to put your heels on the 10-yard line. And if the ball appears to be traveling over your head, then you let it go over your head and let it bounce into the end zone. Other than that, you know, you do what you do. Probably going to fair catch the ball. Like most special teams coaches will tell you, okay, be ready for a fair catch, because normally that's what happens under those circumstances. But me, I'm like, man, I'm very frustrated. I'm very frustrated. I didn't get a chance, you know, yet to make an impactful play, and so as the ball is being punted, I make sure I get a good, clear vision of the ball leaving the punter's foot. And as it leaves his foot, you know, I look at the flight of the ball, and I always take a glance down just to see if there's anybody in coverage who's close to me. And there wasn't anyone in coverage, but I knew the ball was actually traveling over my head. So then I had a decision to make. I'm like, oh, man, am I going to let this ball bounce into the end zone, or am I going to catch it? So, Jimmy, I decided to retreat. And at that point, once I make that decision, I have to make something happen, you know, because if I catch that ball inside the 10-yard line and I get tackled anywhere inside the 20, then, you know, it's a bonehead play. The head coach, Gary Moeller, is going to chew me out. I mean, it's just not a good situation for me. So as I retreated, I was like, okay, I got to make something happen. So I make the first wave miss, the first wave of tacklers or defenders miss. And then now I'm looking at the second wave, and I believe that because I'm kind of pinned to the left sideline, that they probably think, okay, he's going to try to break open to his right, because that's where he has like a lot of real estate to work. Exactly. And so I faked like I was going right, and then I went back to my left, and now I'm looking at the punter. And so at this point, Jimmy, I'm like, okay, am I going to do this backflip that I've been practicing all summer? Because in my mind, it's a wrap. Like no one, like he's not going to tackle me, and no one's going to catch me.
And you blew past him. You blew past the last guy.
Yeah. He, you know, I tried to set him up, and then I broke closer to obviously Ohio State sideline, like Kirk was saying, and I just ran clear down that left sideline. And now I had the presence of mind to say, okay, am I gonna do this backflip or not? And I was like really debating with myself on the way down there, because I really practiced the backflip. I wanted to do it. This is like the golden opportunity. And don't forget, Jimmy, like, you know, every time I scored a touchdown that season, I never did anything except handed the ball to the referee, and I celebrated with my teammates. You know, we call it like the old Barry Sanders.
That's old school. I like that.
Right, and that's what I did every time. But now I'm like, okay, am I gonna do this backflip or not? And then I chickened out. I'm like, man, if I do this and and I mess up, I'm on SportsCenter for the wrong thing. So I crossed I got inside the 10. I decided I wasn't gonna do it, and then I crossed the goal line, and in impromptu fashion, spontaneously, I did the pose.
Just a spur of the moment thing. Let me kind of take a little bit of a left turn here, because you mentioned something that I think has become an issue the last few years.
Okay.
In a kind of cultural discussion. You're old school. You hand the ball to the official. How do you feel about like crazy celebrations? I mean,
I'm gonna tell you what, J-Ro, what really gets me is like every time, I don't care who it is. It can be a wide receiver. It can be a running back. It can be a quarterback. Every time a guy gets a first down nowadays,
I know.
If he gets a first down, you would think he just scored the game-winning touchdown of the Super Bowl. It's unbelievable how these guys, they celebrate small wins. Like if you have a quarterback, he's scrambling, you know, coverage breaks down, he runs, he slides, he gets a first down. He's letting everybody know, first down, I did it. It's like, son, calm down. You just got to, so that really gets me. If a receiver catches the ball or running back, it's just, to me, it's too much. Like, they're celebrating first downs and things of that nature nowadays. It's like, it's utterly ridiculous to me.
Yeah, you remember, I remember the crazy, the uproar when Billy White Shoes Johnson became the first one when he spiked the ball.
Yeah.
And what a departure that was. I mean, again, I'm like you. Two of my favorites of all time, Jim Brown and Barry Sanders. And I just love the quiet dignity of just,
right.
Here you go. Here's the ball. Let's go. I got business to do.
Yeah, my coaches would say, act like you've been there before.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So look, you came to Ann Arbor as a running back, right?
I did.
And it wasn't going so great for you, was it?
Yeah, so this is what happened. So I got to Ann Arbor, and when you're a freshman, you have 3 days of freshman camp before the veterans come in. So we just want everyone to get acclimated and get used to the routine and everything. So the first day of freshman camp, because I was a safety at St. Joe's and I led the state of Ohio interceptions too, I actually played defensive back. So I went to the defensive back group the first day. The second day I played running back. And the third day I played wide receiver. And so at that time, Bo Schembechler was the head coach. Gary Moeller was the offensive coordinator. And Cam Cameron was the wide receivers coach. The three of them called me into the meeting room. And they said, listen, we think that you can help the team faster and more effectively at wide receiver. We got these 3 wide receivers. Because we had like a real crowded, running backs room, which is okay by me. I ain't have any issues with that. But they said we got these receivers who are leaving. Greg McMurtry, John Colasar, and Chris Callaway. They said these guys are upperclassmen. They're on their way out. We'd love for you to play receiver because we got tremendous confidence in what you can do with the ball in your hands, but we know you can catch it too because of the interceptions and everything. I said, okay, coach. I'll be in a receivers meeting tomorrow, and it wasn't like a bait and switch route. You recruited me as this, and now you get me here on campus, and now you want to switch. You want me to switch positions? No, it wasn't that type of situation at all, J-Ro. It was like, okay, because it was all about the team. So I went to the receivers room, and it was cool. But Cam, he was a young coach, trying to make a point, trying to prove, that he was a guy who Bo Schembechler and them can trust. And I thought that he tried to make an example out of me too much. And one thing that he that they had to do is, like Kirk was telling you, it was like 3 yards in a cloud of dust. So you were like a really, really very athletic blocker. That's what you were. You were a very talented athletic blocker on the perimeter for Michigan football. And if you got a couple of passes, then, you celebrated that night. So anyway, I had to do a lot of blocking. And it was just something that I wasn't used to doing out there on an island, because if you're wide out, you're blocking guys who are probably just as athletic as you. They just may not. Backs, right. Exactly. So they can move. Safety. They got a lot of space. When I was a running back in high school, I blocked. It was no problem because we were very physical. We ran the wishbone in the eye, but the guys were in the box. So they're where, they're not going to move a lot. They're going to try to actually come at you because they have to get the guy behind you. Whereas the guys out there in the perimeter, the cornerbacks, they're going to move, dance, and all that type of stuff. I had no problem in high school, like blocking guys who were in the box because, they're not going to dance out the way. It's just they're going to be physical, so you have to be physical. So I struggled with that early. I really struggled with that. And Cam, he tried to make an example out of me, and I just wasn't the guy to make an example of. It just wasn't my nature. I wasn't raised that way. And I thought he was disrespectful. So there was a lot of tension, a whole lot of tension, to the point, J-Ro, where, I considered leaving Michigan. Like, I really was going to leave Michigan. And I talked to a guy who's my friend now, is a mentor, but he was on the staff, like associate AD, I think. I'm not sure what his title was, but his name was Greg Harden. And Greg Harden, I tell people all the time, this has been well documented, that I do not win the Heisman at the University of Michigan if Greg Harden is not there, if he's not on their staff. And it's more of a mental thing, because the physical tools were there.
What did he tell you?
He told me a lot. And that would be a whole show. Like, that would be a whole show. Yeah. But to boil it down to in a nutshell, he helped me prepare for what I had to deal with mentally. And it's the mental, I think, struggles that a lot of student athletes deal with that
Right.
they may not be equipped to handle at times. And so I think mentally, I just wasn't dealing with the situation as best as I possibly could. Like he said, one thing Greg told me, because he was really, the one thing I liked about Greg and I loved about Bo, those guys, they will look you in the face, look you in the eye, and tell you the truth and expect you to handle it like a man. And Greg said, okay, say you transfer, say you go to Notre Dame. What's to say that's going to be better there than it is here? What guarantees do you have that they're going to treat you any better at Notre Dame or, wherever you want to go than they're treating you right here at Michigan? I was like, well, that's a good point. Because, he said they're going to tell you what they're going to tell you to get you on campus.
To get you there.
Exactly. So, like I said, so he approached it from such a mature standpoint, helped me mature, man to man, eye to eye, gave me some great advice, great lessons. But like, yeah, okay, so you do leave. Who's to say it's going to be better there? That whole everyone thinks grass is greener on the other side theory.
Yeah, sometimes the grass on the other side is dead.
Exactly. And you don't know it until you get there.
Yeah. So did you and Cameron ever get straight?
Eventually, yeah. Eventually we got straight. Yeah, because, as Bo retired, Gary Moeller took over as the head coach, and then Gary Moeller elevated Cam Cameron from wide receivers coach to offensive coordinator. So, at that point, once you're, one of the better players in the country is on your team, and you want to, make sure that he's good, then it worked. It just worked. It worked because, I think Cam could see the benefits of, and don't get me wrong, like I changed my attitude. I don't want to say it was Cam. Like I changed my attitude. Like Greg helped me put myself in a better space mentally so I can deal with everything that I had to deal with every time I went down to the football building. And not only did that help me athletically, but it helped me academically. It helped me socially. So Greg Harden put me in such a better space mentally that I was so mature. Like, I don't know if you know this, but when I was at Michigan, like I wore a shirt and tie to class and carried an attaché case. Like that's who I was. So my mental game was so strong. I was just at another level because I thought completely differently than what I did, the way I thought as a freshman. So with that being said, I understood what was at stake and I understood what I wanted out of this whole deal. And Cam and I, we were cool. So Cam and I, we became real cool. But I became cool with, the whole staff.
Yeah, all right. So shirt and tie to class. Now, did
Yeah.
you wear shirt and tie in high school?
Well, I had to. See, I had to.
So
I
this
went to
kind of
Catholic high
felt
school.
natural to you, right?
Right. Well, yeah, but then, you're on your own, you're independent, and, you guys are wearing sweats and flip-flops or sweats and tennis shoes, or you wearing jeans. Like, everyone's much, much more casual in college. Like, I'm taking a position where I'm like the sore thumb that's sticking out, and everyone's everyone's carrying a backpack, but I carry like an attaché case. You see what I'm saying? So, it was just my mental at that point, mentally where I was.
30 years. It's
Yeah, man.
just so hard to believe, man, that time moves with the velocity that it does.
Tell me about it.
How does it feel looking back on that?
Wow, it's amazing because I get to share these moments now with my family, especially like the kids, because they, there's certain things that you can look at YouTube and you can get an idea, but when it's happening like right now in real time and people are celebrating it, they're honoring it, then it becomes, I think, that much more significance, especially much more significant to the children. So it's mind blowing, especially when you think back on that play. I mean, J-Ro, I'm just a little kid out there trying to make a play, man, just trying to do something because I was so frustrated and I couldn't make an impactful play at that point. And I'm like, man, these guys, I thought that their mentality was we can lose by 50 points today. But if Desmond Howard does not score a touchdown, we're going to have a really, really happy bus ride back to Columbus. Like, I think that was their mentality going to the game. And it seemed like their game plan was working up to that point.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Do you remember? So your kids are how old now? Your boys?
My boys are 15, yeah.
Okay.
Boys, yep.
Do you remember the first time that they saw the play and kind of had a sense of it? I mean, look, you're on television every week, so they're kind of used to seeing you in the box.
Right,
so
right.
There's not anything about that, but it's different to kind of have a sense of you as a guy with a suit and tie on a Saturday morning, at some college football stadium, as opposed to being the guy in a numbered jersey who's making the plays.
Yeah, I think it really hit them when I took them to Ann Arbor for a game, and they started to really see how the people reacted to their dad, like how the people responded to their dad, and how we showed that play and how people would talk about the play. And then, the biggest compliment is when you walk past certain people and they do the pose.
Love that.
Exactly. So now they're like, why is everyone doing this thing that my dad did when he scored? You know what I mean? So I think that's when it really the light switch clicked for them, and it came on. They were like, okay, this is something significant and major.
So I'll tell you something that I find really very, very telling. So you won a Super Bowl MVP, which you'd imagine that's as big as it gets, right?
Yeah.
But I think you are probably more well known for not only having won the Heisman, but for that punt return and that moment than you are for having won the Super Bowl MVP.
Jimmy, I would probably agree with you just because everything was so perfect in that moment. We talked about, the rivalry, the big game. We talked about Keith Jackson, his call, and obviously the pose, which was the exclamation point on the whole play. So I think it's just the pageantry of everything involved in that play. You put it in context, I think it makes it so significant that it overshadows just about anything and everything else that I've done.
Yeah, hard to believe.
Man.
It's been 30 years.
Do you remember where you were when you saw that play for the first time?
I don't remember where I was when I saw it the first time.
Okay.
But so let's see, 1991, I would have been working at ESPN.
Ooh.
I would have been working at ESPN. I do remember, how everybody talked about it and just seeing it time and time and time again. And it's this, just for what it's worth, I think moments like that at that time were one of the reasons why SportsCenter became so culturally significant, because it was the type of thing, it was the only place you could go at that point where you knew you could get this, and you could get it again and again and again, and you could get context. And I mean, I can't even imagine, what was the week afterwards like for you? Do you remember that?
Whew, that's a good question. Man, it was like a whirlwind after that because, it was like a whirlwind after that week because we didn't have a Big Ten championship game. We didn't have that back then, and you just at that point, I guess, getting ready for the award circuit, and that's about it. Doing a lot of interviews and things of that nature, and I remember one thing. Before I went to New York for the Heisman ceremony, Coach Gary Moeller, he sat me down in his office. And Gary was a guy, I mean, it's Michigan, so it's all about the team. They don't promote any individuality, right? And so everything was about the team. And the beauty about what I did that season is there's not like Gary Moeller tried to feature me. It's just that anytime I had an opportunity, I took advantage of it. I mean, we still were running club. Like, we ran the ball a lot because we had some great running backs. But so we, Gary always downplayed it. Gary Moeller, he downplayed everything. And when it was over, he brought me in his office. He said, listen, it is clear and obvious you are the best player in college football. And this is the first time he ever said these words to me. It's crazy.
Wow.
He's like, he's saying, so when you go to New York, you should feel that way, because you are. He said, now, I just want to say that strange things have happened because the previous year, people thought that Raghib Ismail of Notre Dame was going to win it. He's going to win the Heisman. But then Ty Detmer of BYU won it.
That's right.
So he wanted to caution me against anything wild or crazy like that happening, but he wanted to assure me at the same time that, it's clear that you are the best player in college football. I'm not sure what's going to happen in New York. Things should go your way, but just in case, rest assured, you were that guy. So I mean, it was good to hear Gary say that, and it was good to get that type of reassurance from him. One more thing I want to tell you that I'm talking about Gary Moeller. He would never say this like during the game or anything like that, but with that 4th and 1 play against Notre Dame, there's like an audio clip. It's video too, actually, of the timeout that he called during before that play. So it's 4th and 1 against Notre Dame. Gary Moeller calls a timeout. He brings us all over to the sideline. He's giving us instructions. He's like, Elvis, who's the quarterback, we're going to call, Elvis Gerback. Elvis, you're going to call this play, which is a pass play. So he's like, this is the play, but you're going to check it with a running play. He's like, so when you do this, Elvis, make sure you see this. Ricky Powers, who's the running back. Ricky,
yep.
if we call the run, if he checks to the run, make sure you secure the ball. We're gonna do this. Boom, boom, boom. Desmond, look the ball in. Oh, boom, boom, boom. So he gives us all these instructions, right? It's the audio. It's fascinating. And then we go back on the field, and now he's on this headset talking to the coaches up in the booth. And he's talking to Jerry Hanlon, who was a longtime assistant. He's like, hey, Jerry, am I making the right call? Because it's a pass play. But if they give us a funky coverage, because I'm the only receiver out there, then he's going to check to the run. He's like second guessing himself. And he said, you know what's going to happen, Jerry? He said, Elvis going to throw the ball to Desmond. Desmond's going to score.
Is that right?
He says that, yeah. Before
and you can hear it.
Yeah, you can hear. Oh, yes, it's a great clip. It's a video. Yeah. So, he was like, man. And then afterwards, he's like, that kid is something special.
Truer words have never been spoken. A life-changing moment, not only for the University of Michigan, but certainly for you.